Millionaire ignores his pregnant wife for 7 years, but when a rival sends her flowers, he goes crazy. Helen Lockhart was just 21 when she married Adam Blackwood. The ceremony unfolded in St. Cecilia's Cathedral beneath soaring arches and stained glass windows, the kind of wedding that dazzled the city's social elite. Paparazzi stationed outside captured glimmers of her ivory dress and the groom's cool patrician features. Some in attendance whispered that Helen's father, Michael Lockhart, had orchestrated this union to salvage his faltering finances. Others marveled at Adam's skill in consolidating power with a seemingly docile bride at his side. In the weeks that followed, Helen tried to see beyond the flashbulbs and formalities to glimpse the man she hoped Adam could be. There were flickers of charm. He took her on polished tours of Boston's cultural scene, offered her glimpses into the philanthropic circles that shaped the city, and sometimes listened when she ventured to discuss her love of art. But those moments were fleeting. More often than not, Adam was consumed by phone calls, board meetings, and strategic planning for the next big conquest in real estate, tech, or venture capital. Helen wanted to believe they could fall in love, slowly if not immediately. She consoled herself with the idea that arranged marriages sometimes turned into successful partnerships. Her father, Michael, insisted that Adam's empire would protect her from any hardship, granting her a life of comfort and security. Yet behind the walls of the Blackwood mansion, Helen already felt the weight of an impending loneliness she couldn't quite name. A few months into the marriage, Helen discovered she was pregnant. She felt more relief than trepidation. A child, she thought, might anchor them, compelling Adam to slow down and focus on family. She pictured revealing the news, Adam's eyes lighting up at the thought of fatherhood, the two of them forging a genuine bond over the shared anticipation of raising a child. But reality cut deep. In the lavish hush of Adam's oak-paneled study, Helen uttered the words, "I'm pregnant," only to receive a response as cold as granite. Adam glanced up from his laptop, eyes unreadable, tapped out a final message on his phone, and said simply, "We'll arrange the best doctors and a nanny once it's born." Then he turned back to his screen. No affection, no excitement. The moment that might have knit them together instead unraveled the fragile hope in Helen's heart. Days slid into weeks, and Adam's absent gaze became the norm. Helen went to prenatal appointments alone, pressed her palm over the gentle swell of her belly, and whispered promises of love to her unborn child. She emailed Adam the ultrasound images, receiving curt acknowledgements, "busy now. Let's discuss another time," that never materialized. Staff at the mansion regarded her politely, ensuring her physical comfort, but they remained distant, as though sensing she was not the beloved trophy wife Adam's public life suggested. A single confidant emerged in the form of Maria, an older maid who had worked in the mansion for years. She offered small tokens of kindness, a cup of chamomile tea, a soft blanket on Helen's restless nights. Helen clung to these gestures, starved for any sign of warmth. During lonely early evenings, she walked the echoing corridors, pressed her hand protectively against her belly, and wondered if Adam would ever see this child as more than a detail in his meticulously orchestrated empire. Evelyn Rose Blackwood was born on a snowy January evening. True to his pattern, Adam was abroad when Helen went into labor. The mansion's driver rushed her to the hospital, accompanied by the ever-supportive Maria. Hours of painful contractions yielded a baby girl, tiny and perfect, who nestled into Helen's arms with squeaking cries. Tears of love and sorrow dripped onto the newborn swaddle. Adam arrived the next day, carrying an impeccable bouquet of lilies and offering a perfunctory congratulations. He hovered at the hospital for half an hour, signed the birth certificate, and left to finalize a new acquisition in London. A swirl of camera flashes followed them as they exited the hospital upon discharge. But inside, Helen felt more invisible than ever. From that point forward, the pattern consolidated itself into an unchanging rhythm. Adam soared in business, forging deals that landed him on magazine covers, while Helen nurtured Evelyn in the quiet isolation of the mansion. The staff recognized her devotion, especially as Evelyn developed into a sweet, curious toddler. Meanwhile, Adam's presence flitted in and out, appearing like a shadow that visited for a day or two, brandished expensive gifts, then disappeared on another international flight. Years blurred. By the time Evelyn was 3, she recognized her father's face from framed pictures more readily than from actual visits. Helen's heart ached each time the girl looked for Adam and found only emptiness. Yet she told herself that maybe, one day, Adam would see Evelyn's bright smile and realize the intangible beauty of fatherhood. That hope grew thinner each time she faced another of Evelyn's birthdays, spent with just a seat left vacant at the table. When Evelyn turned 5, Helen organized a cheerful garden party. She decorated the mansion's expansive grounds with pastel balloons, a bouncy castle, and a mini petting zoo. Adam, as usual, promised to arrive and cut the cake. He never showed. After the final guest left, Helen walked among half-deflated balloons, tears stinging her eyes. The child's father had missed yet another milestone. Such scenes repeated, and the hush in the mansion became the backdrop of Helen's existence. The staff were kind, fulfilling her practical needs, but they could never fill the emotional void. Her father, Michael, died when Evelyn was around 4, removing the only paternal figure who might have intervened. Freed from his orchestrations, Helen found herself bound solely by the silent contract that was her marriage. To cope, she rediscovered painting, an art form she'd once loved before her father's financial woes forced her into an arranged marriage. In a neglected greenhouse at the edge of the mansion's property, she set up a modest studio. There, she coaxed color onto canvases in stolen hours. Maria occasionally peeked in, bringing fruit or tea, remarking gently how the greenhouse glowed when Helen was there. Indeed, that hidden nook became a sanctuary, one place Helen felt truly alive. As Evelyn approached 7, the hush around the Blackwood marriage gave way to faint rumors among Boston's social circles, speculation that Helen lived a solitary life, that Adam might have other interests abroad, or that a quiet meltdown was brewing. All of it, while lacking definitive proof, resonated with a kernel of truth. The perfect facade was cracking. Into this tense quiet fell an unexpected spark flowers. One morning, Helen stepped into the foyer to find a lavish bouquet of red and white roses. The card pinned among the blooms read, "Helen, just a small reminder of how inspiring your talent is." Daniel Harrington. Daniel, an art dealer Helen had met at a charity function months earlier, had been cordial, encouraging her to share her artwork publicly. She had parted from that conversation flattered, but not reading deeper meaning. Now, these roses felt more personal, a statement that someone beyond the mansion's walls believed in her, admired her. Anxiety gnawed at her. Adam rarely noticed details around the house. Would he see these flowers? If he did, would he care? After all, for 7 years, he had all but ignored Helen's personal life. Gently, she placed the bouquet in the sunroom, deciding she wanted to enjoy them quietly. Something about their color and fragrance made her heart lighten, if only momentarily. Yet fate intervened that same evening. Adam returned from a business meeting early, wandered through the sunroom, and discovered the striking arrangement. Anger darkened his features. "Where did these come from?" he demanded. Helen's heart hammered. She tried to explain the harmless nature of Daniel Harrington's gift, how it was purely admiration of her art. Adam's expression radiated jealousy and contempt. "Men don't send such bouquets just for art," he snapped. "What's going on between you and this Harrington?" Helen flared with indignation. "Nothing," is going on? Do you even realize how little you've been here for me or Evelyn? Of course not, because you're too busy. Now you want to question me over a bouquet of flowers? The confrontation ended with Adam storming out, leaving Helen trembling in the sunroom, the roses still bright and unashamed in their vase. The next days were fraught with silent battles. Adam extended his stay in Boston, claiming new local developments required his presence. But Helen suspected he simply wanted to watch her every move. Tension spiked. Every time a phone notification buzzed, Adam turned a suspicious eye her way, half expecting it to be from Daniel Harrington. Behind closed doors, Adam invoked the concept of the perfect brand they had built as a couple, pressuring Helen to attend philanthropic events together. She bristled at his cynicism. This brand was her heartbreak masquerading as marital harmony. Meanwhile, in the greenhouse studio, she found fleeting relief in painting. Evelyn occasionally joined her, painting whimsical little scenes with bright colors. If not for those stolen artistic hours, Helen might have suffocated under Adam's oppressive gaze. Then came a fancy gala known as the Boston Arts Benefit. Adam insisted they appear together to quash rumors of marital discord. Evelyn was brought along to bolster the image of a united family. The event was magnificent, live classical music, well-dressed patrons admiring local artwork. In that swirl of sophistication, Helen spotted Daniel Harrington by an exhibit. She mustered the courage to exchange polite hellos, each moment conscious of Adam's watchful presence. Inevitably, Adam found them. Seeing Daniel near Helen roused a possessive fury in him. He pulled Helen aside, practically snarling in her ear that she was not to cause scandal. She retorted that he was the source of scandal by neglecting her for 7 years. The confrontation simmered dangerously close to public meltdown. Only for Evelyn's sake did Helen hold back, forcing a calm facade as they left the gala. In the aftermath, arguments erupted daily. Adam confronted Helen about messages or calls he suspected she exchanged with Daniel. She discovered suspicious documents implying Adam kept a luxury apartment in San Francisco, possibly for a mistress. Each confrontation escalated the sense that their marriage was a charade. Helen sought solace in phone calls with a trusted friend, Teresa Lee. She admitted she felt trapped and frightened by Adam's intensifying hostility. Teresa urged her to consider professional advice, maybe even divorce. For weeks, Helen wrestled with the notion. Fear of Adam's legal might clashed with the desire to protect Evelyn from a father who was physically and emotionally absent. One night, after Adam discovered that Daniel had sent Helen an email invitation to a local art showcase, he exploded in rage, smashing a glass in the living room. "I will not be humiliated," he shouted, voice echoing off marble floors. Fear churned in Helen's gut. She realized she could no longer remain inert. That night, she drafted an email to a reputable divorce attorney recommended by Teresa. Pressing send felt like crossing a threshold from which there was no return. As legal consultations began, Helen took the bold step of leaving the mansion. Late one night, with Maria's discreet help, she packed a small suitcase for herself and Evelyn, quietly slipping out while Adam was holed up in his study. A car arranged by Teresa whisked them away into the city's quiet streets. Exhausted and frightened, they arrived at Teresa's condominium, where mother and child found a momentary refuge. Adam retaliated with swift brutality in the legal arena. He filed for full custody, accusing Helen of endangering Evelyn's stability by uprooting her. Tabloids seized on the story. Blackwood heir's wife vanishes with daughter mystery art dealer possibly involved. The swirling rumors cast Helen as an unfaithful spouse influenced by Daniel Harrington. Yet for all the spin, Helen felt a strange sense of relief. She had chosen to break free, to fight for custody of Evelyn in an environment untainted by Adam's ambition. She poured her life story into affidavits outlining Adam's repeated absences, his dismissive reaction to her pregnancy, the final meltdown over a simple bouquet of flowers. Teresa and the attorney, Lauren Stevens, rallied around her with unwavering support. The day of the preliminary custody hearing dawned. Outside the courthouse, reporters jostled for pictures, lobbing questions about Helen's rumored affair or Adam's mysterious second apartment in San Francisco. Helen held Evelyn's hand tightly, nerves rattling her every step. She met Adam's cold gaze as they entered the courtroom, each accompanied by a formidable legal team. Adam's counsel painted him as a devoted father, burdened by business obligations. They implied Helen was flighty, her bond with Daniel inappropriate, and that removing Evelyn from a life of privilege was irresponsible. The tabloids, they claimed, supported allegations that Helen was unfit. Helen's attorney countered with logs of Adam's business travels, demonstrating how seldom he'd been present for his daughter's milestones. They argued that Helen had served as Evelyn's primary caregiver in every sense. They also presented preliminary evidence that Adam might have misrepresented certain finances or had a separate living arrangement, casting doubt on his moral authority. The tension soared when the judge asked Evelyn a gentle question about her father. The 7-year-old responded softly, "Daddy is never home. I love him, but I want to be with Mommy." That simple statement, charged with a child's honesty, crystallized the entire conflict. After a recess, the judge returned with a decision. Temporary custody would be granted to Helen, with scheduled visitation for Adam pending further investigation. The final arrangement would await additional hearings, but for now, Helen had won a crucial step. Tears blurred her vision as she hugged Evelyn. Adam's composure cracked only slightly, revealing a glare that promised more battles ahead. With the court's preliminary ruling, Helen found a glimmer of hope. She remained at Teresa's condominium, navigating the swirl of paparazzi and gossip. Offers of help poured in from unexpected corners, some from friends in philanthropic circles who admired her bravery, and others from artists who recognized her name from Daniel Harrington's gatherings. Each day, she contributed to the slow process of finalizing a permanent custody plan, discovering in herself a fierce resilience that had lain dormant during 7 years of quiet despair. Adam, incensed by the temporary defeat, still pressed legal maneuvers. He threatened to freeze accounts or drag out the divorce. But Helen's attorney stayed vigilant, countering his moves. Meanwhile, Daniel Harrington wrote her a thoughtful email. "If at any point you wish to showcase your work or find an outlet for your talent, the door remains open." She read the words and felt a twinge of something that might be possibility, an acknowledgement that she could choose a life shaped by her own passions. Evelyn adapted surprisingly well to the new environment, though she missed the mansion's spacious garden. But her mother's consistent presence outweighed any luxury. They spent evenings reading books, painting side by side, and rediscovering a sense of normal family life. The father figure she rarely saw became a figure on the periphery, appearing at structured visitation times mandated by the court. In quiet hours, Helen reflected on how a single bouquet of flowers had rattled a 7-year marriage. What it truly revealed was that their union had never been about love, merely a transaction overshadowed by Adam's ambition. Daniel's thoughtful gesture had uncovered a deep, lurking discontent and forced Helen to face a choice: remain imprisoned in a mansion of illusions or seize the courage to walk away. Helen's story isn't merely about heartbreak, though heartbreak is there in abundance. It's about discovering an inner wellspring of strength that had gone unnoticed for years. She had once pinned all her hopes on the idea that a child would remind Adam of what mattered. Instead, Evelyn reminded Helen of her own worth, inspiring her to fight for a nurturing environment free from emotional neglect. Adam, for all his wealth and business triumphs, learned too late that real connection and empathy can't be bought or commanded. His jealousy over an innocent bouquet only accelerated a collapse that was inevitable from the start. The tabloids might continue speculating about rumored affairs or hidden fortunes, but those sensational angles miss the real core: a young wife, dismissed and overlooked, finding the fortitude to declare enough. The final steps of divorce would be messy court hearings, property divisions, debates over spousal support. Yet, the essential victory lay in Helen's ability to carve out a life anchored by genuine love for her daughter and the promise of creative fulfillment. She no longer lived in Adam's grand mansion, but in a simpler space where she could open her windows each morning and let the honest light of day stream in. Where Evelyn could paint whimsical gardens of her own, and mother and daughter together could laugh without fear of a father's rage. And in that simpler space, Helen might even nurture a friendship or more with Daniel Harrington, a man who saw her not as a subordinate piece of a corporate empire, but as an artist brimming with unexpressed talent. Whether that friendship blossomed or not, Helen's path was hers to choose, free from the suffocating demands of appearances. To onlookers, the story ended with a swirl of legal headlines and a father embroiled in a bitter custody battle. But for Helen and Evelyn, it ended with fresh possibility. Hand in hand, they walked into an uncharted future, hopeful for love, emboldened by dignity, and certain that no bouquet of flowers would ever again cause them to cower in fear. Because they had reclaimed their own story, and therein lay a power far beyond any millionaire's grasp. From silent heartbreak to a moment of reckoning, Helen's journey reveals the true meaning of resilience. For 7 long years, she lived in a gilded cage, overshadowed by a husband who placed prestige above parental devotion. It took a single bouquet of flowers, sent by a man who admired Helen's talent, to unleash the hidden fault lines in her marriage, forcing Helen to choose between continued subservience and a bold pursuit of self-worth. Her decision to break free, even under threat of ruin, underscores the power of a mother's love for her child and a woman's love for her own future. Though her path involved legal storms and tabloid rumors, she ultimately seized the right to shape her destiny, a destiny that goes well beyond the static role of millionaire's wife. She stands as an emblem of quiet strength, reminding us that genuine wealth springs from love, dignity, and the courage to hope. Thank you for reading this expanded, condensed retelling. If you found Helen's story moving or thought-provoking, please share it and consider exploring other narratives that highlight the enduring spirit of those who refuse to remain unseen. Your support encourages the creation of more stories that celebrate resilience, personal growth, and the spark of new beginnings.